Thank you for joining us and for watching this DAMES webinar. Today, we are proud to have pilot parents of Southern Arizona here to educate us about how they create advocates and how they are creating a tribe of advocates here in Arizona. I hope that you enjoy this educational webinar, and if you like it, I hope you consider becoming a DAME. At DAMES, we strive to educate and empower parents raising children who have disabilities. Enjoy. Hello, DAMES members. Thank you so much for coming to today's DAMES webinar series. I am beyond thrilled to have Marianne Scott with us today to talk about Arizona Partners in Leadership and the training program that they put on here in Arizona. Now, I had the honor of meeting Marianne because I was a participant in this program last year. Marianne has been a facilitator of this program for 6 years, and not only does she teach parents and people with disabilities how to advocate, but she has actually passed laws in Arizona. Last year, she helped to pass dignified changes, and I'm hoping that she will get around to talking about that during the presentation. If not, we'll follow up afterwards. But it's absolutely amazing when you meet somebody who not only talks the talk, but walks the walk at the same time. So Marianne, I'm really thrilled to have you here and for you to teach us all about Arizona Partners in Leadership.
Thank you. My self-value has went up a notch or two, Michelle. Thank you. This is exciting to be a part of this DAMES webinar. So thank you for inviting me and allowing me to let families and people watching get an inside look at what this program is. I love to be able to support families who are raising individuals with disabilities or special healthcare needs and let them know about opportunities out there. It was interesting. Recently, I was talking to a previous graduate, and she said, "I'm so surprised more people still don't know about this program." She's like, "It's the best kept secret in Arizona." And so thank you for giving me this platform to share about this program.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to, just share what this program has to offer to everyone. So go ahead, take it away.
All right. Just like I said, Michelle said, I'm here to share about the program that I've coordinated. It's been about 8 years for Pilot Parents of Southern Arizona. Pilot Parents is a nonprofit located in Tucson, and it has a long-standing record of service to families in the Tucson and surrounding communities. The organization, it was incorporated in the 1970s, and it has continued to grow and flourish over the years, offering different programs and resources. So we're going to head into what the goal of the program is that I facilitate. I'm just going to be specifically speaking about this program to you. And the program is called Arizona Partners in Leadership. And this program was designed to train selected participants to be a network of advocates and leaders where they're working in partnership with their elected officials to positively change the way people with special healthcare needs or disabilities live or work, how they're educated, enjoying the benefits of being actively involved in their communities. Simply put, this program teaches you how to become an effective leader and advocate so we can continue to work for inclusive communities and then change society's expectations of individuals with disabilities and special healthcare needs. So to me, this program, it truly is invaluable. So you say, well, you work for Pilot Parents. Why? Of course, you're going to say this is invaluable. Like you're recruiting and you facilitate the program. But I do want to go back to a time where I was not an employee for Pilot Parents of Southern Arizona. I had just moved to Arizona in 2008 from New York. And let me go to my next slide here. And we've been in Arizona for a couple years. It's 2010 now, and I was having some difficulty with my kids' school. Prior to choosing this school, I had interviewed them and asked them about their special education program, as my oldest daughter, Macy, has significant disabilities. When I was interviewing, I learned that the students were placed in general education classes with aides and only pulled out when necessary, right? So I was ecstatic. I was like, this is a gold mine. In New York, it was self-contained completely. If I were to choose a program that allowed you to be in a general education classroom, it would have been an hour commute each way. And so I chose the school, and it was a self-contained classroom. So I was so happy. So we're here for a couple years. It's now 2010, and I wasn't ecstatic anymore, right? At college, I received my degree in early childhood education, and I'd added another special education endorsement to my degree. And so I felt I was good to go in navigating school systems. And it turned out that I needed some help when some difference of opinions in Macy's needs were and what her students' rights were, and I could not resolve them with the school. And so I did a quick Google search for a parent training center because I was new to Arizona. And I learned about Pilot Parents of Southern Arizona. And it was then that I became aware of this program. I applied, I was selected, and I gained so many advocacy tools that I've been able to use to make my daughter's life better, and then make some really cool changes in the community that I live in. So I go through the program, and I come home every weekend, and I'm like, Scott, to my husband, oh my goodness. Like, I tell stories, I'm all jazzed up, I'm all energized, and he's like looking at me weird. But then what happens the next year? He applies and he goes through the program. He took his personal time off to go through the program. And then he was a graduate of the 2014 class. So for both of us, having went through the program, it really gave us a common base to be able to navigate the world of disability, and both be able to go into IEP meetings or doctor's appointments and have this level of understanding between both of us, that we're both at the front, that it's not me as a mom pulling my husband along or vice versa. And so in our home, it was wonderful that we were both able to go through. The Arizona Partners in Leadership program, it truly shifted our whole paradigm and how we look at the possibilities for Macy's life, and then also even for my husband's and my life. We looked at our future, and it was bleak. It was really bleak, the things that we thought were going to be our life when we were 50 and she was 25, right? So I don't know if anyone else here who is with us now or watches this later has ever felt this frustration, this hopelessness, or discriminated against when trying to navigate systems or working for inclusion for their child. Oftentimes, people find this program, Arizona Partners in Leadership, because they are so discouraged, or they have seen or experienced gross injustices and they want to make change. One such mother was Shelly, and she's the one on the left there, getting kisses by her dogs. She was in my 2018 graduating class. And so we had just had our first day of session, and had been in there from 10 a.m. until 8 p.m., taking breaks and lunches, a heavy day. And she had said some things during the day that I was like, oh my goodness, this mom has such a weight on her shoulders, being a single mom. And I was just really back there praying for her individually, and worried about if she was, going to be able to continue with the program, with how she felt about herself and the situation. And in the middle of the night, she made a post to our closed Facebook page, and I asked permission. I went back to our 2018 Facebook page, and I read, because when I was preparing for this, I'm like, that testimonial that she gave was so profound to me, that when I checked it, at 6 a.m. the next morning before, classes start on that Saturday. And I read it and I'm like, oh, it made my heart rest and validated the whole reason why I work for Pilot Parents of Southern Arizona, and the need and the reason for this program here in our state. So Shelley, she said, let me find my quote. And her personality rocks, by the way. You can hear it in her, what she says, but she says, hear ye, let it be known to all. I've had an overnight paradigm shift. One day into the conference, and I realized my thinking about what is possible for my daughter has been very small and rather depressing. I've been focused on what I think she can't or shouldn't do, that I don't appreciate what she can do. My daughter is a freaking rock star, capable of great things. My daughter, Courtney, has dreams and goals for the future, ones that I have been poo-pooing because I didn't think they were realistic or sustainable. No wonder she is frequently depressed and dissatisfied. Anyway, I just wanted to be the first participant to announce that this conference has changed me to think differently. I don't know yet how I'm going to help her pull this off, but for the first time in 20 years, I think life is worth living, one with purpose and meaning and self-determined. It is realistic and sustainable, and I'm kind of excited. So she puts this post in the middle of the night. The next day, a lot of people talked to her and chatted with her, and she's a character. This isn't in my notes, but it made me think of this about just who she is and how she truly believed and letting her daughter have self-determination. So not to disclose too much of her daughter's information, but her daughter wanted to sell marijuana. That was because it, had impact in her life. And so Shelley was walking by this CBD dispensary, right? Regardless of how she felt about it, beliefs for it or against it, whatever, right? But she walked by and she's like, my daughter wants to work here. So what did she do? She walked in and she started a conversation with the owner of it. And she would have never, ever even considered that idea a week or so before. So from my opinion, prior to being an employee for Pilot Parents, and from Shelley, and if anybody on here has ever considered the program, there's so many testimonials out there, so many people that have went through that. If you're on the fence or trying to decide if this program would be valuable to you, I'm saying that it's invaluable, not just valuable, but invaluable. In fact, I'm going to go back to my notes here. From 1987 to 2015, 27,000 self-advocates and parents of children with disabilities and special healthcare needs nationally and internationally have graduated from this program. Here in Arizona, we are heading into our 24th class, already graduating close to 500 leaders and advocates here in our state. This is truly amazing for Arizona. Let me see where I'm at here. So we are going to shift gears here to something a little bit depressing, to be honest. We're going to talk about why this type of program even needs to exist. I'm going to spend some time on disability history because when we look at the past, it can be a gauge for today. It can help us see how far we have gone and do an awareness check on where our efforts and energy can be focused in regards to quality of life for individuals with disabilities or special healthcare needs. Is there really need to have a program like Arizona Partners in Leadership here in our state? Should we be spending money for this program? So we're going to stay on this slide for a while. It's an awful slide. It's a true slide, the picture that's depicted here, just to support the dire, awful, horrific situation and history of people with disabilities and special healthcare needs from as far back as records were kept. So we're going to go back to Aristotle time. He wrote, "As to the exposure and rearing of children, let there be a law that no deformed child shall live." In Rome, children with disabilities were treated as objects of scorn. Children who were blind, deaf, or mentally retarded were publicly, and I'm going to be using the words that are in history. We know we don't say some of these labels now, but just to reinforce the impact of what truly was going on in these times, I am using accurate verbiage And it's what they said. So ugly word, but it's in there. So were publicly persecuted and reported to have been thrown into the Tiber River by their parents. Some children born with disabilities were mutilated to increase their value as beggars. Other children born with disabilities were left in the woods to die, their feet bound together to discourage anyone passing by from adopting them in the military city of Sparta. The abandonment of deformed and sickly infants was a legal requirement. Through the 1700s to mid 1800s, not much changed. The term idiots came on the scene and was defined as persons with little or no intellectual functioning. Incapable of attention, idiots cannot control their senses, is what was said. They hear, but they don't understand. They see, but do not regard. Having no ideas and thinking not, they have nothing to desire, therefore have no need of signs nor of speech. By the middle of the 19th century, society was much more aware of persons with disabilities. In an era of scientific and economic progress, social reformers alerted society to the often horrible living conditions of its many outcasts. By the 1850s, some social reformers began advocating for better services for all persons with disabilities, many of whom were living in appalling conditions. So as I share this history, I didn't make a list of all those people. There have been advocates over time that have recognized situations and have been, this is awful and we need to do something. So when I talk about history, this is what was going on in society, even though there were pockets of good people noticing and wanting to make change. One person recorded more than 9,000 idiots, epileptics, and insane in these United States, destitute of appropriate care and protection, bound with galling chains, bowed beneath fetters and heavy iron balls, attached to drag chains, lacerated with ropes, scourged with rods, and terrified beneath storms of profane execrations and cruel blows, now subject to jibes and scorn and torturing ticks, now abandoned to the most loathsome necessities or subject to the vilest and most outrageous violations. So more of society became aware of these conditions, which helped to prepare the way for public institutions. And it prepared a way for public institutions, and the people of the time thought this was a good thing to do. During this time, training schools like Institution for Feeble-Minded Youth, what a name, right? Let's go put our kid in that school, started popping up on the East Coast, and it offered hope to many families with children with mild disabilities. You know, why would this offer families hope? Because they had this history in society that were told who their children were and what sort of worth and value they had. And so they were like, oh, there's somewhere to take my kids. There's hope now. The new underlying belief was that through proper education and humanitarian means, we could make the deviant undeviant. We could change them to fit better into the world. The word got out that these training schools could cure disability, and the number of training schools increased. But the commitment to the training didn't increase. The schools quickly became asylums, providing custodial care for an increasing number of individuals with developmental disabilities. As enrollment increased, the commitment to education was largely abandoned, though. Pupils started to become inmates, and the dehumanizing era began. Unlike the early training schools, the new institutions no longer encouraged interaction with the community. They were located in rural areas and away from the view of most people. A lot of ugly scars in history, like forced sterilizations, euthanasia happening over in Germany, lobotomies, and shock therapy were the norm and were happening in these institutions that families were sending their kids to because they were professionals and they knew what were best. So it wasn't until World War II, late 1940s, when public attendants who worked in these institutions went to war, and people started to see what the institutions really were like. There was a reawakening of hope and possibilities for people with disabilities. Frustrated and angry over poor living conditions and the lack of community services, parents, note who were the ones that started to make effective change, parents began to organize and demand services for their sons and daughters. Although the ARC has changed its name over the years, it was first registered in 1953. and family, friends, self-advocates, and professionals organized to change how people with disabilities were treated. So organizations started to come onto the scene. There were other advocacy nonprofits surfaced like United Cerebral Palsy and Association and others that I'm not going to list. Although work and efforts were happening, doctors were still telling families that the best place to take your child if they had a disability or a special healthcare need was to these institutions. That's what they were being told. John F. Kennedy became the 35th president. Civil rights movements were underway. Robert Kennedy visited an institution called Willowbrook, and he called it a snake pit. If anybody has interest, get some Kleenex and Google Willowbrook, New York Institute for people with disabilities, and you can see the horrifics, sort of like this picture here on the left, like actually how people were living. What happened though then, how they even got this Willowbrook video, where reporters were doing exposés and showing what life in an institution was like. And during this time, prime television was coming on the scene, and so they were able to show visually. It wasn't just, you know, hearing rumors or somebody sharing something that they thought that they knew or heard, but people could see with their eyes on TV. And there were books like A Christmas in Purgatory that were written to describe the nightmare and the hellish conditions that were brought to light of how individuals with disabilities were treated. So movements started to happen, and people that had family ties with individuals, parents and family members, community people. There were elected officials like Kennedy, Bush, and the Reagan administrations that were really instrumental in legislative change to start to bring about some humanity to individuals with disabilities. I want to sidetrack here for just a second and talk about redwood trees. I can't see here, but let me look here because my screen is over my slide, but I will try to read it. Here, let me move this. I'm going to minimize and then I'll bring it back. So redwoods, with the fires in California and things burning down, I learned a little bit about redwoods, and they are the tallest tree on the planet, and they reach heights of 400 feet. But interestingly, their roots are really, really shallow. But their roots spread and they like intertwine. And so they have this large, strong underground root system. And I want to compare the movements that were happening in the United States to these redwoods and their root system. That individual families can be compared to these shallow roots that go down underground that are trying to make some individual successes for their family. And they might make some headway in their individual community. But for effective, lasting change, it really does take a community. Your roots need to spread and interconnect and form a network and a grassroots organization. And when we look back at history, at any civil rights movement, it's when small groups of people band together for a goal that they are achieving. And oftentimes within these groups, they might not even have similarities in belief in religion or politics, or even sometimes, you know, how you do dinner at the table. Do you eat in front of a TV or do you do it around the table? But you do have this common goal that you see needs to change. And so you come together, and there's power in that. There's a lot of power in that. So we're going to move into some of these movements so you can see how movements work, how a grassroots movement work. So movements, this is when people organize and they're using combined power to fight for rights and laws and for equity and access. And the parent movement, that was from 1950 to present. And this was where they primarily focused for education rights, community living, and employment. Then we go into the independent living movement and Ed Roberts. This was from 1970 to present. It's still going on. And this is where this movement focused on independence, access, and community supports. We go into another movement, and it's called the self-advocacy movement, and that started around the 1980s to present. And this is where the people that were working together, they really press for the right to make their own decisions and have those decisions be respected. Another movement was the disability rights movement, and that started around the 1980s and is currently still going. And this disability rights movement was largely responsible for the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which passed on July 26, 1990, under the Bush administration. And this act ensured equal access to education, housing, and living in the most integrated setting with community supports, access to equal employment opportunities, access to public transportation, public buildings and information, equal opportunities to participate in community activities and events. And if you notice the word ensure, how do you ensure something? With the ADA, the Office of Civil Rights were also involved. And so if this isn't happening, there is a path to advocate and find recourse and get help, and that would be through the Office of Civil Rights. So here we are in history. Laws are passed. Life is looking up and better than ever, right? And what happens, though, are people start to take a breather. And self-advocates and parents of children with disabilities, they had stayed involved in legislative advocacy through these grassroots organizations and movements, but when all these laws started to happen, they relaxed a little bit. Back then, and still now, there is truly an uphill battle to continue to work for inclusive communities and change society's expectations of individuals with disabilities and special healthcare needs. And this is where this program actually came into existence, because there truly is a need for self-advocates and families to be the major players in changing systems or policies and to seek to find the funding for disability-related needs. So this is where the creation of Partners in Policymaking came to be. So you just heard a different name, and I'm going to get to why this is a different name in just a moment. But it was in Minnesota where there were the executive director, Colleen, she was on the Governor's Council on Development of Disabilities, and she went to go fight for an increase in Medicaid funding. And there weren't really parents and families there and self-advocates, and it didn't go all that well. And she went back to work, and she's like, gosh, we need to have self-advocates back and families back. These are the ones that can influence policymakers at the local, state, and federal level. I want to talk, I heard this folklore recently, and I hope I don't butcher it, but it was told that in olden days, when you go to fight, that you come to fight and you have your shield in your left hand and you have your sword in your right hand. And sometimes leaders would come and meet for a moment before you go to battle. Like, to me, that doesn't make sense, right? But you meet for a minute, and you would see like the intent of the battle when they come up to meet themselves. And if you put down your sword and shook with your right hand, you were saying that I don't really believe in this. I don't trust this. I'm not making myself vulnerable to make any change. And if the leader of the tribe or whatever would put down their shield, they would say that I am not protecting myself right now, and I am letting people in to my vulnerable situation. Like, I'm now sort of taking this analogy and going back, and so I'm putting my shield down so I can let you know that I'm letting you attack me in essence if I, didn't have my shield up. And when families are going to testify and letting the whole world see what their life is like and what their day-to-day life and their existence is, there's power in sharing your truth and power in vulnerability. Um, Not to confuse that with poor as me and that I need all this help because this disability is so debilitating. It's the reverse. It's you're letting your guard and your shield down to let them know that you have a disability, but is not limiting. That you're letting people in to see what your life is like, because you need to ask for help, and asking for help is not a sign of weakness. And so I love that analogy about the shield coming down and letting people see. This idea of the shield's going to come up a little bit later if I have time to talk about dignified changes and my own personal involvement in that. So Minnesota, they came up with this training, this program, and their whole idea and their advocating for this program was that over time it would create a network of highly motivated partner graduates working at all levels of government to positively influence the people who shape, make, and implement disability policies. The training program moved quickly from general concepts to a comprehensive approach focused on teaching best practices in the developmental disabilities field over a wide range of issues, and then also how to influence public officials at all levels of government. They named the program Partners in Policymaking, which here in Arizona, we changed it to Arizona Partners in Leadership back in 2015, so fairly recent. But this was after collaborating with the New Hampshire Institute of Disability and really wanted to also add things to the competencies, not change them in any way, but just add more of like a leadership concept. Because here in Arizona, in our state, and you do have the liberty when you bring this program to your state to sort of look and see what the needs are of your state and to add things to it. And so we really felt that with all this education and skills, that leadership is critical to understand, because there's different types of leadership, and sometimes confused leadership is only the person that's the president of the organization. And there's a lot of people that don't naturally have the skills to be the president or to be the speaker, the mouthpiece, but there's so many leadership skills and attributes that are involved with movements and advocacy that we really wanted our graduates here in Arizona to know that we could find a leadership skill and attribute in every single person that comes through the program. And so we changed the name Partners in Policymaking to Arizona Partners in Leadership. It's the same competencies that are covered, same model, it's just a different name and some more leadership components. So if anybody wanted to read more about Partners in Policymaking, they could do a Google and go look for the Minnesota Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities, and it is an amazing resource. This program, there's lots of pieces there that you could go and research the heck out of this. So I do want you to understand that our name has just changed. When I graduated, I was a graduate of Partners in Policymaking, same as my husband. So we're going to move on. So this program, there's 11 core topics addressed in the program, and there has been little change in these core topics. However, the training is based on best practices and what's going on at a national level, at a state level, at a community level. So we can have these core topics, but the presentation can change dramatically and what's happening across the scene, right? So I'm just going to read these core topics. The first is history of disabilities, which I gave you guys a taste of that. And there's so much more, because when you go and you look at history, that what is going on in the world and in societies dictates the tone and the belief about how people view people with disabilities. And right now, we still need to change the tone and how people view people with disabilities, for employment, for access, for social interactions. There's so many areas where the view still needs to be changed. The second core topic, inclusive education and lifelong learning. Third, service coordination and case management. 4, supported and competitive employment. 5, supported living and home ownership. 6, assistive technology. 7, person-centered planning, self-determination comes into this. 8, local and state government. 9, federal government and federal issues. 10, community organizing. 11, parliamentary procedure and serving on boards. So when you read about the the big idea is to make change legislatively, that is the big idea, but there's so much in all of these, and we invite national speakers to come, and then we also invite local speakers here in Arizona to sort of give us a taste, because if you've ever been involved and have had some awful things happen, whether it's in the education system or trying to get a service, you're like, but wait a second, there's that law called FAPE, like free appropriate public education. So, and what about least restrictive environment? And wait a second, DDD, my daughter's eligible for an OGCOM device, and now you're saying that it takes 2.5 years to get one? Like, so you come to your state and you invite agency heads, people like Michelle, people that are in our agencies and live in it here in Arizona, and you bring it in, but now you've had this national view to sort of question systems here in Arizona. And how do you make change? A speaker once told me that if you're looking to change your community, going federally oftentimes doesn't result in successful outcomes. Sometimes it does. I'm going to sidetrack here for a minute because it just made me think of that. But during the Reagan administration, there was a girl, Katie Beckett, and she had some significant special healthcare needs. And back then, during that time, when you had these sorts of needs, you were in the hospital. Like, that's where you lived, because to receive any sort of Medicaid funding to take care of medical needs, you had to be in the hospital. And they got to a point, though, that the mom knew how to take care of her daughter. And she thought it was ridiculous that their whole family was in an uproar. Somebody needed to be at the hospital at all times, and their family life was crashing. And the mom was like, this just doesn't make sense. And the cost to have Katie stay in the hospital, when if she was at home, I could be a part of a caregiver and save the money state. And she just thought it was ridiculous. And so this story got to Reagan's desk, and it was a Friday when he heard of it. And he called his Medicaid person in, and he said, by Monday, I want this little girl home. And what happened? On Monday, this little girl was home. And so I don't want to like poo-poo the idea that you can't make change at a federal level. You can. But most oftentimes, to make change, you start right next door. You start with your neighbors, and you start in your community. You start in your school systems. And you oftentimes get started because you are living in a home with a child with a disability or a special healthcare need. And that's where parents are so powerful, is because it's affecting them heavily. And they have investment, and they have passion, and they have desire because they love their kid so much, and they know their kid has every single right as their sibling who doesn't have a disability or a special healthcare need. And so that's why parents, and even more so self-advocates to be their own voice, are their powerful people. So you learn all of these things and so much more during this program. Let me see where I am at. Okay, so this slide here, don't we all want our kids to have a great life? Like we do, right? Don't we want our kids to go to school and have friends and be able to be educated and have the accommodations they need. If we sat down as parents, I'm sure, have that same destination. And I want to share a story that I heard recently that totally hit this idea home for me. And I heard it from a sibling who was involved in it. His name was Yahosh. And he said that he grew up in a family of 8. And they had very humble living circumstances. The boys lived in one bedroom, the girls in the other bedroom, the parents in the third bedroom, and they had one bathroom. And one of the rules in their house was around mealtime, because he's like, we all could eat, like we loved food, but the rule was that you could not go back for seconds until everybody at least got first, right? So life is happening. When this experience happened to him, he was 6 years old, and he had an 11-year-old sister. And one day she comes in and she's like, Mom, I just can't take this anymore. This isn't like the way I'm living is just not right, you know. And who knows what was going on in her 11-year-old life, but in her mindset, she truly was having a hard time, right? So she tells her mom, I'm moving out. And this little girl walks down the hall and she gets her suitcase and she comes out, and her mom and dad are like, well, all right, let's go. And so they all go get in the car, and Yahosh is like, what's going on here? I mean, he's 6. And so him and his older brother are like, we're gonna go, and like, what's going on? Our sister's moving out. So they go get in the car, and Yahosh remembers they didn't drive too far, but the dad pulls over and says, all right, I think this is a good spot for you to get out. And so his sister sort of like looks and opens the door, and then mom's is like, oh honey, I really wished you would reconsider. We love you so much, and you're such a big part of our family, and we're going to miss you desperately. And can you please reconsider and give us another chance? I promise things will change. Mom and daddy are working, and things will change. Would you please reconsider? And she sat there for a moment, and she's like, all right, I'll give my family another chance. And so they go home. So Yahosh and their brother, they like look at each other and they go home, and they go about their life. Well, the next morning comes breakfast time. Older brother, he eats his breakfast and he goes up to his mom and he's like, I'm still hungry. I want seconds. And she's like, you know the rule. You need to wait till everybody has first. Your sister and brother and your dad haven't come in and eaten. And the older brother is like, what? This isn't fair. He goes, I'm moving out. So he goes down the hallway, he grabs a bag, and he starts to walk out. And Yahosh, who's 6, idolizes his older brother. And so he's like, well, if he's moving out, I am too. So he goes down the hallway, he grabs a bag, and he follows his brother out the door. And they walk down the street, not too very far, and they sit down on the curb. And they're sat there for a while, and soon enough, here comes mom. And she comes down and she looks at Yahosh and she says, get your butt home or I'm going to whip it. And Yahosh looks at his mom and he takes off running home, and he gets home. And to the 11-year-old, she says, if you come home, I'm going to whip your butt. And she turns around and walks off. Well, the 11-year-old didn't come home until later that night, but he came home. So the reason for this story is the goal of the mom was to have all of her kids return home. She wanted all of her family at home. She knew that was the best place for them, but she also knew which strategy would best fit each child. And she used that strategy to reach her goal. When you come through this program, you are going to learn strategies and tools and skills that you will be able to utilize to get the change that you are seeking. And I'm not exaggerating. It happens. You can get to the same destination using the different skills and tools and education that are found in this program. I'm going to give an example. School versus town, and this is a personal example. My daughter, Macy, she's 19 now, and she has significant disabilities, both intellectual and physical and medical. And she would go to her primary school in the town that I live, and recess would come and there's nothing for her to do. And she loves swinging. And so I thought they could get an adaptive swing. We put one in our backyard. My husband put 4 poles in with cement, and we went and bought a lawn chair from Home Depot. He cut off the legs. We got chains. because the adaptive chair that you see here is very expensive. And so she got to swing, right? So I chose different strategies. Okay. With the school, my two other kids were coming through younger, like 3 years down the road. And I knew I live in a small town and the relationship was really, really important if my kids were going to continue in the public education system here. And I believe in education. I'm a public educator. My dad's retired as a public educator. And so I wanted my kids to be here. That was the choice that I was making at this time. And so I decided to volunteer for PTO. I went to the classroom. I volunteered every single day. IEP meetings, I brought treats. I got gifts for people. I sold t-shirts. I was their t-shirt coordinator. I volunteered as much as I come. And every year at the PTO meeting, we would go and we'd sit down in the library and they would say, what should we spend our money on this year? And I would raise my hand a little timidly. And I don't know why I felt like they were doing me a favor if they would do this, but I did. I felt that way. And I just said, I would like to fundraise to be able to add an adaptive swing on the playground. You guys are earning money for playground equipment. I think this would be an awesome thing to include. Not only would it allow my daughter and other people something to do, but will teach the community here at the school that she has value and that she's included. Okay. I did this for 8 years. 8 years. And then my kids left the school system. And it was 2 years later, and I was in McDonald's drive-through, and I get a phone call, and it's the PTO president, who I had worked with for years, Deborah. And she calls, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? You know, because it was so out of the blue. And she's like, Marianne, you're the first person I wanted to call and tell. Oh, I don't want to get choked up, but I did. I was sitting in the McDonald's drive-through getting my large Diet Coke, and she said, we are buying a swing and it's being put in this summer. And I started bawling, and I was like, okay, so 10 years of relationship building. I called the principal, I emailed her. I was like, Tina, thank you so much. Can I please come and take a picture? She let me come on campus, and I took a picture. And right now there is a swing on that school campus for all the primary kids that have a special healthcare need or disability that doesn't allow them to run around. The kids on that campus are seeing that they have value and that they're included and that they're a human being and they deserve to be on that playground. All right, same problem in my town though. My town didn't have a swing either. And my other little kids love to go play at the park. And my friends, my girlfriends, we would go have play dates. And what would Macy do? She would sit by me on the bench, and I would have this mother guilt like complex going on here. Can I sit with my girlfriends and just chat for a moment and have a moment to myself, like get some self-care? Or do I take Macy, because at the time I could walk, you know, try to help her walk and maybe go sit on something and like guard her and hold her and be away, you know, and try to go sit on the grass over and throw a ball to her, you know, something like that. But my strategy was different when I tried to get a swing in my town. I went to Facebook and I let everybody in my community know about the problem and unfairness. And this wasn't just me alone, by the way. There were another mom, Erin Thomas, who's a graduate of the program prior to me going through, and she sort of like headed this up, but we were both on the same page. Like she sort of took point. We were both like head to head, like doing this, and we went to town hall and we did public testimony, and we followed up and we sent emails and we sent them ideas. And so right now in Sarita, there's 2 swings in 2 different parks, and we are currently working towards a complete park that is inclusive. So I use different strategies to get to the same destination. My daughter can go out in her community and swing now. So outcomes. Outcomes from going through this program are vast. You can numerous Numerous graduates have started and become leaders of nonprofits or become involved with existing parent groups, have changed their careers, have testified before the legislature to support bills relating to disabilities or other special healthcare issues. Several have run for local or state offices. They have become involved with school boards across the state. They've influenced tribal communities to address issues of disabilities within their members. Several have received awards for their involvement and contribution on local and state issues. The outcomes of going through this program are in so many communities in our state. And how is our state going to change? By having educated, knowledgeable people that understand the issues and that are now involved in the decision making, right? This is how you influence. This is where power is. So this program, again, is invaluable in making changes in every aspect of a family's life if you do have a child with a disability or a special healthcare need. I'm gonna go back. I don't want to go there. This is, let me see. I'm gonna come here and then I go back to the outcome. Michelle, how am I doing on time?
You're doing fine. Yeah, you've got
Okay.
about like 8 more minutes, and we can always add a little bit at the end too for testimonials. You have some former members on today, so we might even tap into them and
okay,
see what their outcomes were from the program, and then maybe some Q&As. But you're doing fine.
Okay. So every year in this program, we go to the Capitol for a field trip because you don't get it. It's like the Grand Canyon. You see a picture, but until you go there, you're like, wow, this is why people from all over the world come to see the Grand Canyon. So going to the Capitol on a field trip is pretty powerful. You go and you see where it happens. You meet with legislators and you interact with them and you start to develop these relationships and partnerships because these are the people who we vote, who we elect, who are going to be making some laws that will impact our kids, right? So prior to the picture and the class members that you see here, I had invited a senator to come and talk to my group, and I had found him because he had been working on changing tables that involved infants and getting it in men's bathrooms, right? So I invited him to come because I wanted to also throw in the difficulty that I had with my daughter and changing tables for adults that have bathroom needs when they leave their home, right? So it was the year before I brought it up, and it didn't really go far. I didn't put a lot of effort in it. I told him, I sent like a follow-up email, and it didn't go anywhere. So the next year, I have my class at the Capitol, and we're sitting around the round table, and I invited him to come back, and he's talking again, and he's like, well, I already talked to you guys last year about the adult changing tables, right? And I was like, no. Like every year we have a new class that comes through. So this is a new class, but there was a mom. She's right there in the red pants. Her name is Courtney Burnett. And she's like, wait a second, changing tables? There's a law about adult size changing tables? And so I quickly gave her a history of what I was talking about. And her daughter has similar needs as mine, right? Also on that table, though, there's a lot of parents that their kids don't need a changing table. And in the very back there is Amanda, and she was beside herself. Amanda was like, are you kidding me? When you guys leave your house, you actually have to change your kids on a public bathroom floor, or you have to like change them in your van, or you have to put up a pop-up tent? Like, oh my gosh, this can't be. And the whole group sort of got fired up. And I went home that night. It was a Saturday night because the session is for a Friday all day and a Saturday all day. And I go home and I'm tagged on Facebook, and it's Amanda putting such a heartfelt post about her fellow brothers and sisters that have kids that experience this dehumanizing thing all the time. And it picked up momentum. And I saw this, and Courtney saw this, and another mother right there in the middle, Susie Marie, who has never went through the program. She saw this, and we started a private message group, and we organized. Okay, So when you come to this program, you're going to learn how you can organize. And each one of us had skills and talents that when we merged them, and then also our roots spread out, we're here the redwoods, our roots spread out to the current class that was going through the program, to all of our previous graduates in the program, and to friends and family of people that live this as well, that never even knew about this Arizona Partners in Leadership program. So we organized. We took a long time to figure out a name and who we wanted to represent. And sometimes laws, when you're going after them, they take the name of the person in which the law originated from. And we talked about that, but we decided we want this name of this moment, this movement, to be about what it truly is. This is about dignity. This is about fairness and access. This is about, why is there a bathroom for every other person out there? Why is there bathrooms in the airports for dogs? Why are hundreds of thousands of dollars spent in airports to renovate for a dog, which is needed? They're service animals. So I'm not saying don't do it, but why? And then my daughter, there isn't. So we wanted this to be about dignified changes. And this was such an awesome experience. I facilitated this program. I'd made some community changes, but this was the first experience that I had to be part of a legislative change. And it was exciting, exhilarating, so much work, so much emotion, such roller coaster of rides. But going through this process, you learn so much. And it was amazing, the people that came together and the strategies that we used, the creative strategies that came together from people like saying, well, what do you think about that? And what do you think about that? And I became the spokesperson for it. So sometimes, you know, people are like, you got this law passed. And I gently remind them that me alone, never, ever, this would have been achieved, ever. But it was through the hard work and dedication and belief of so many people that came together to make this happen. And so we got the law passed. It needs a lot of work still, and I'm trying to find the energy to dive back into this, because it was a starting place and it needs so much more change. If you're interested in about that, you can go to dignifiedchanges.org and you can learn all about it, because we are going to be needing a lot of more advocates to be able to make this a better law and to have it be more far-reaching and impactful. I want to go back to the outcomes that you can't see. And this, if we go back to the beginning when I talked about Shelley, about the outcome that she felt on day one. She hadn't graduated from the program and went and, you know, got a new job or a new position or became on a board, but the outcome that she experienced is one that you can't see, but it's a feeling. And it's one of the most powerful outcomes, because that's what drives you to take action. And it was this paradigm shift, this realization that there is hope. There is hope. Right now, is there so much work to do? Oh my goodness, yes, there is. But are our kids in institutions naked, going to the bathroom and having people come in and hose down the feces and excrements into a drain? No, they're not. Are there still a lot of injustices in group homes and awful things that happen? Yes, there are. So advocacy still needs to happen, but there is hope. There is hope. There's power in self-determination that you come to understand. There's networks that are developed. We don't talk, there's not really a competency for relationship building. It's a natural byproduct. And we don't make it a competency because that's sort of is down your throat, there's going to be a competency for relationship building. And it would probably harm the idea. But if we do have time for testimonials, I would let them speak to the relationships that can happen. So do you want to sign up yet? If you want to, you can. This is a flyer that goes around, and we were supposed to start in September. In fact, a couple weekends ago, we were going to, when we were starting to recruit back in June, our hopes that with the current situation with COVID, we're going to allow us to start in September. And we pushed it back solely to start in January because we're hoping that we can do this in person or a hybrid model or something, because the experience changes if you do it virtually. It does. It can still be powerful, but it's a different experience. And we know where the power is, and we want to provide that same type of experience. So we did change the deadline, which is coming up in about a month from tomorrow. And we already have some great applicants who met the first deadline. We do have a selection process. And so we want to make this as rich as possible for people coming through. And so we are accepting more applications to sort of be able to look at all of the applicants and decide to find the richest group that can really make impact and change in Arizona. So how do you do it? You can go to our website. You can download the application, fill it out. It's not that big of an application. There are some supporting documents that you need, but get it into us. There's no cost, believe it or not. Like the cost per pupil to come through the program is pretty big. But Pilot Parents has worked to partner with different people over the years to be able to fund the program. And this is pretty important because the time commitment is big. It's a big time commitment. And the commitment is pretty important to acknowledge, because when you do sign the contract, you're saying that you're going to attend every session. And 8 sessions, 2-day sessions, Friday morning to Friday night, stay the night, Saturday morning to Saturday night. It's a big commitment to leave. Who's the population that's coming through? Who's eligible to come into the program? Family members or caregivers that have children with disabilities or special healthcare needs, and then self-advocates. So it is think how hard it is to go on a date, right? How hard is it to leave your family for 2 days? So that's why there is no cost. That's truly the reason. Sometimes we've talked about adding a little bit of a cost, not to support the program, but sometimes when you pay for something, then you show up, right? Sometimes it takes a couple sessions for you to be like, this is so life-changing that this paradigm shift didn't happen day one like it did for Shelley. Accommodations and meals are provided. There's even travel reimbursement given if you do meet the carpooling and meet the distance requirement. What are you committing to? You're committing to 8 2-day sessions, totaling 128 contact time, and there is homework. So there is a link there that you can follow to be able to do that. This is just the flyer that goes around. And I want to close with this story. And it's a powerful story. It is called, it's referenced by the Capitol Crawl. And on March 12th, 1990, over 1,000 disability rights activists marched from the White House to the United States Capitol to demand the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which had been stalled in Congress. So here's a strategy, right? This is a powerful strategy. To illustrate the barriers that many people with disabilities faced every day, over 60 activists cast aside their wheelchairs and crutches and began crawling up the 83 stone steps that led to the Capitol building. Among them was this little girl, Jennifer Keelan Chaffins, 8 years old with cerebral palsy, who declared, "I'll take all night if I have to," as she pulled herself up the steps. In honor of the 30th, this story came out this year because in honor of the 30th anniversary, like this came out and was spread around again. And this is how I actually found it when I was reading up on the 30th anniversary. But this is a historic act that happened. And it was the first major national legislation in the world to treat disability rights as a civil rights issue, which is pretty critical. We're sharing the story. They shared this story to show that you can be a young activist, that it doesn't have to be a mom, it doesn't have to be an adult, that if you have kids right now, they can be an activist in their IEP meetings, they can have self-determination and person-centered planning process, they can be an activist in friendships and social groups. And so that was the purpose in sharing this story. So Jennifer was born in 1981 in Michigan, a month premature and weighing just 3 pounds and 10 ounces. By the age of 2, Her mother, Cynthia, and her grandfather, Chuck, were told by doctors at the Shriner Hospital in Arizona that she had cerebral palsy and would never be able to move, talk, or learn. This is quotes. "We were told to put her in a home or put her up for adoption," calls Cynthia. "The family opted to keep her at home and soon became active in the growing disability rights movements. When she was born, she had her fists clenched in the air. We just let her do the rest," says Cynthia. "She was a very strong advocate." After moving to Phoenix, Arizona, Jennifer participated in her first protest at age 6, supporting the efforts of the disability rights group ADAPT, which was fighting for greater accessibility. The experience made a big impression on her, she reflected later. "It was pretty cool to see a bunch of people in wheelchairs fighting for their rights." Shortly after, Jennifer had her first experience with blatant discrimination when she went with the other ADAPT members out to eat at a restaurant, but the group was denied service. The staff told them that people don't want to watch you all eat. Jennifer continued to join protests, including one in Montreal, Canada, where she was arrested at age 7 along with other activists at a peaceful disability rights demonstration. The following year at the Washington, D.C. protest focused on passing the ADA, some organizers didn't think it was a good idea for her to participate in this Capitol crawl. Fearing that the image of a child crawling up the steps, Jennifer explains, would send a message of pity instead of empowerment. Jennifer was determined, however, telling them if somebody my age didn't do it, then nobody from my generation would be represented. She recalls that it was a very hot day and the crowd at the base of the stairs had grown very large. But the further up the steps I went, the more I felt empowered. I felt like I had all the other kids behind me who couldn't be there. I felt that it was important not just to represent myself, but to represent them and their voices. Pressure by the participants in the Capitol crawl and other activists helped to push the installed bill out of committee, and 4 months later, on July 26, 1990, President George Bush signed the ADA into law. To many disability rights activists, its passage was the culmination of a fight for civil rights which had been waged for over 20 years in our country. The historic law not only transformed life for many people with disabilities in America, it also became a global model according to the Disability Rights Education Defense Fund. 181 countries have passed disability rights laws inspired by our American Disabilities Act. So while the disability rights movement has been one of the most successful and impactful social change movements of the last century, however, it's also one that most people know relatively little about because it's not taught in our history books. I hope somebody someday this is my own thoughts, by the way, writes a history book that alongside women's rights and race issues and religious rights, that there's a representation for history rights for people with disabilities. So anybody out there who's an author and has any education background, maybe you can develop a curriculum that includes this. The ADA was the first major piece of national legislation in the world to treat disability rights as a civil rights issue, and its impact for people with disability was far-reaching. Requirements for accessibility made it standard for architects and designers to incorporate accessible features like automatic doors, bathroom stalls with grab bars, and braille on elevator buttons. Telecommunication companies were required to provide services for those who were deaf or hard of hearing, and television began including closed captioning. People with disabilities who had previously been forced to live at nursing homes from a young age had the opportunity to live independently. Schools started integrating classrooms, which had an effect on how kids saw their peers with disabilities instead of oddities. They were classmates and friends. The great thing about the ADA is that it covers almost everything, says Edward Steinfeld, the director of the Center for Inclusive Design and Environmental Access at the University of Buffalo. It's created a society in which people know they have to provide accessibility and treat people with disabilities with dignity and respect. Why do I love this story? Because today at 39, Jennifer remains a vocal advocate for disability rights. She and her mother live in Denver, Colorado, where she's partnered with Mobility of Denver, an independent wheelchair access vehicle dealer, as a brand ambassador. But in 2017, she graduated from Arizona State University with a Bachelor's of Science in Family and Human Development. She continues to be a strong self-advocate across the board and has her fingers in a lot of things that are disability related. But this hits home because where do we live? Arizona. So major things have happened here in our state. And right now, discrimination is real for those with disabilities and special healthcare needs. And access to a quality life and in finding communities that are inclusive and built, universal design, like built, not an afterthought, but initially built to foster independence. The disability rights movement is not over. So everyone, I ask you, come and join this Arizona Partners in Leadership program. Go to our website and apply, because it's something that's going to impact you and your family, and it's going to impact people in your communities, people in your state, people in our country, and even globally. And with that, I say thank you. Thanks for letting me be here.
Thank you so much, Marianne. That was really wonderful. I thought it was a really great overview of the program in whole and what it brings to the community. I know Kimberly is on here, and she said that she did apply this year, and she wants to know when she'll find out if she was accepted. I know you guys have expanded the amount of time for registrations. So do you have any idea about when you might be getting back to people about what the next year's class is going to look like?
So in our guidelines of how we run the program, people apply, and then we reach the deadline. And then we do have a selection process where we have board members with our nonprofit, people in the office, we pull in parents, and we do have a selection process. We're looking for different criteria that would make the program really rich. So Kimberly, the new deadline is November 2nd. I do hope that you've received communication letting you know of that change. And if not, I apologize, and I'll write down your name. But you will have the selection committee, and then you will find out more than likely before December, a couple weeks, sometime in November. So please keep checking back in though and touching base with us, but it will be after this new deadline date. So, and I'm excited you applied.
Awesome. Well, one of the things I really love about the program is you not only have parents, but you have self-advocates. So someone else was wondering, at what age is it about the right time for a self-advocate to come into the program? Like, what's the youngest person you've had in the program, and maybe what's the oldest self-advocate you've had?
So we usually right around when they're reaching adulthood. We've made some allowances. We do follow the guidelines set forth by the Minnesota Governor's Disability Planning Council, but there is a little bit of leeway. I know one year that there was a boy that was going to be turning 18, and his mom came through and he came through. When they're underage, there's some legality things that come into play about who's responsible for them. If they stay the night, there's some things like that that do have to be looked at. And so it's not that you would be discounted if you were under the age of 18, but typically they're over 18, like a young self-advocate adult. We've had some older self-advocates come through, but if you're looking for that prime target area, I don't want to like assign a number to it, 18, 20, 28, 30, I don't know, somewhere in that time frame. But self-advocates can be powerful at any age though. So again, we would look at individually and really see if it would be a great fit too.
Okay, that's really great. I know we had a self-advocate in our group, and we all absolutely fell in love with her. And, we know she's going to go out there and make some really big changes. So I was a participant in this program last year, and it has been really amazing what I kind of got out of this. So after this program, I networked and I met people who are now sitting on the board of my charity that I'm forming, right? I'm now like, the All-Tex Parent Planning Council has invited me to be a part of their group, which is absolutely amazing. And, when you get into conversations with people who run these different organizations, what you find is very often they're not personally connected to somebody with disability. So they're advocating for your child, but they don't have that personal touch and that personal connection to it. So I think that to be a parent in those rooms is so powerful, because your perspective is something that is often not in there, which I was kind of surprised to discover. I don't know if you've discovered the same thing.
This makes me think, remember the Shield story that I talked
Yes.
about? So when we started this Dignified Changes movement, right? Courtney Burnett, she has no problem getting on Facebook and sharing personal stuff. Like and I think it's awesome. Like it's such a great skill. Me, on the other hand, if you ever were to go to my private Facebook page, there's minimal posts. I'm more of a private person. I keep things close to my heart. That doesn't mean that I won't speak up if I have to. Like I advocate, I'll go speak and things like that. But she was like, we need to keep this momentum going, like in our core thing. And she's like, Marianne, go on Facebook and do like a Facebook Live and share your story. And I was like, oh, what? Like, I seriously had to put down my shield and let people into my home. And what was interesting is we had just moved into a new home, and my daughter's bedroom, because there's a bathroom right there, is right as you walk into our home. And so when she has a bowel movement, she's incontinent and in diapers. The smell is pretty powerful. And I plugged in smell wells and I had spray, but if somebody would come into our home and she had went to the bathroom, oftentimes you would get the flowery smell, and it wasn't pleasant. And I said to my husband, I'm like, what are we gonna do? And so I go do a live Facebook, and I'm in my daughter's room, and I show this vent, this customer graded vent that he installed in the ceiling. But it took me a long time, and it took guts. My underarms were sweating, and I didn't even really get ready, because I was like, I think I even had a baseball cap on. Like, I don't even think I had makeup on. I was like, I'm just going to do this. Like, Courtney just jazzed me up. Like, I can do this. But I literally did this, and I had friends, even family members, like close people, best girlfriends, that texted me and was like I had no idea. I never contemplated what happens when you leave your house. And so you're right. If my best close girlfriends don't know, how is a legislator who grew up, who's 60 years old, who grew up in the times where people with disabilities lived in institutions, what is their expectation of a person with a disability or special healthcare need? What about the people on all these boards? They have no idea. How are they going to say, a curb cut is important? I think maybe we should make those sidewalks accessible. They would have no idea. So good point. And congratulations. I'm like, oh, I know somebody on the board now.
I know, I'm really excited.
Woohoo! Way to go.
Yes. So I know we have Brianna here and Jody. I don't know, they both went through the program with me. Brianna, Jody, do you guys want to kind of just say what the experience was like for you guys?
Hi, sure. I'll go. I'm sure Jody's excited too. Hi, Marianne.
Hey.
It's good to see your face. The program, to me, I tell everybody it's life-changing. I have 4 kiddos with autism and other varying disabilities and special needs, and I thought I knew a lot. Like I knew that I didn't know everything, but I thought I knew a lot about disability, about DDD, about how things work and how it's supposed to go, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And for me, the program, it was literally life-changing. It gave me the courage to be able to get outside of myself, and I just was accepted to be on the Phoenix Children's Hospital Family Advisory Council with some great encouragement from our fellow partner, Brittany. And then, I'm trying to think, just even like a couple of times been on the news advocating for, the distance learning garbage, scared out of my mind, but, I tried to make Michelle do it and she wouldn't do it. So she told me I had to do it. So I did it.
Great.
I
didn't
die.
You were brilliant.
I didn't die. And I remembered, all my skills that I learned in partners. And sorry, this puppy keeps trying to bite me. And I just think literally any parent of a child with any kind of disability or special healthcare need, it's imperative that you take this course or that you take this program, because like I said, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you,
Oh,
Brianne.
and the relationships. Let me speak
Mm,
on that. They happen organically, but I've met the most incredible women that I've ever met in my life. And just having that camaraderie with these other moms, and I mean, there were a couple dads in there too, but just this little group that we have that came together just organically, and we just share and we encourage each other, and we just want each other to do good things and go out there and change the world, and we just are there to support each other. So I'm so grateful for Partners and Marianne.
well,
Well,
Marianne,
And
I
I
think,
know it was really, really difficult this year with COVID and everything. Yes, the in-person definitely is ideal.
yeah.
But you guys handled it great, and I'm just really appreciative of everything that you guys did for us.
welcome. That's nice. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think Marianne, that speaks to like that invisible networking thing that happens that you don't push but happens automatically because you're with people who get you. And so you kind of, you create your like tribe within this group, which is absolutely amazing. Jody said that she cannot, she can't chime in, so she's in a meeting on headphones, but the program is so informative. And the best thing I got out of it was the new friends of parents and self advocates that are in the group. Um, so, I think that just the outcomes speak for themselves, the relationships that we build, the legislation that we can move. Because, like you said, you're building this great big tribe of women who know how to advocate and push for changes for the community as a whole, which I think is just absolutely amazing. So thank you so much, Marianne. I think we're like way over time, but that's fine. It was really good. It was really informative, and I appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today.
Yeah, I loved it. I have to say, when you're talking for a long, if you're going to give like a 3 to 5 minute speech somewhere, like you practice it, like you look in the mirror, you almost have it memorized. And when it's 45 minutes, I'll be honest, I didn't read through the whole thing one time because I'm like, where do I have 45 minutes in my life to like practice this? So I honestly didn't know how long it was going to be, and yeah, I'm like, oh, I think I'm going way over, so I apologize.
No, it was so much great information. And it's just amazing too to hear your personal story and that you have made changes in a school system, in your town, and legislatively, like in the whole state, which is so cool. So you are just the perfect person to lead a program like this. And I just want you to know we appreciate you so much and all you do for the community. Thank you so much for telling us all about Partners. And I hope that more women and more parents and more self-advocates decide to go through this program.
To learn more about Pilot Parents, you can go to pilotparents.org, and I hope that you sign up to become an Arizona Partner in Leadership. If you've enjoyed this DAMES webinar, I hope that you would consider becoming a DAMES member. Go to www.damesusa.com.